Lieutenant General is the correct pronunciation, isn't it?
Yes, Senator.
Rather,
yes,
thank you. You had me worried there.
Or in the Navy.
Thank you. Well, exactly. Different in the Navy. I did do Google it. Different in the Navy as it's the Army and Air Force, just to make it hard for civilians. Lieutenant General McGuinness, you've talked about the seriousness of the threat environment in your answers to the previous question and other forums. Is there any reason to hope or expect that that's a trend that's about to turn around, that's going to get any better, or do you think that these trends are going to continue?
Senator, I think the trends are going to continue and potentially get worse. I think new technologies bring both challenges and opportunities, and we will continue to embrace opportunities, but our threat actors will continue to leverage the opportunities that those technologies have for them as well. So I think we're going to be continuously chasing.
That certainly gels with what I've heard from other sources as well, and a very consistent assessment. And this is not really a question for you, but probably a question for a budget person to come forward, though, because it's very difficult to reconcile with the Department of Home Affairs expenditure on cybersecurity over the forward estimates, where it peaks this year and then falls in every financial year from now going forward. 77 million this year, 70 million next year, 64 million the year after, 50 million the year after, and as low as 23 million the year after that. So perhaps a budget person can come forward. But in the meantime, Secretary or Mr Hansford, maybe you could shed some light on why we're having such severe cuts to cybersecurity expenditure in the Home Affairs portfolio, given the threat environment that the Lieutenant General just spoke about.
Certainly, I'll let Mr Hansford, who knows this intimately, go first, and Ms Cargill can back us up with the financial data. But in essence, it's about the profiling of our spend as opposed to it being cut.
Thank you. Hamish Hansford, Deputy Secretary, Cyber and Infrastructure Security. I think the first point to make is that the government's action plan is a 2-year action plan. So if you look over the life of the strategy and indeed the life over the forward estimates, the action plan is for 2 years, and there are phased funding for different initiatives in the forward estimates. Ms Cargill can take you through year by year. And so principally the first 2 years of funding are the first 2 years of the action plan, and then the funding drops off in the out years, but of course then the government would expect us to bring forward the second action plan for the second phase of work.
Anything to add, Ms Cargill?
Yeah, certainly. So there's a couple of points to make as well, just in consideration of the program budget. So first of all, there was actually a machinery of government change, so you'd be aware that the cybercrime functions were transferred to AGD, and that was an ongoing transfer of $52 million and $11 million per year ongoing, so that's impacting the total budget. The second key point to make is that what looks like a reduction clearly baked into the forward estimates is very much a reaction to the fact that there's been substantial additional investment. So if you go back to the 22-23 March budget as an example, over 5 years the entire cyber program was $130 million. If you move to the 23-24 budget, the cyber program on the back of that MOG didn't actually dip. It stayed at that value over 5 years, and that was $127 million, and that was on the back of the government's first investment into the cyber piece. And if you look at the 24-25 budget for cyber security, the 5-year total is $286 million. So from a total perspective, it's a substantial additional investment in cyber, and what you're seeing through those movement pieces is exactly as Mr Hansford has explained in terms of the actual action plan.
But unless government makes decisions in subsequent budgets to increase or allocate more funding, then funding will fall, right? It is scheduled and profiled to fall in every year of the forward estimate.
From a much higher base, yes.
Yes, but it's just to still fall. So the reason why I started with a question about the threat environment is I agree with the Lieutenant General. The threat environment is bad and getting worse. And so the only thing we should compare the budget to is what it's been this year and what it is planned to be. We can only take the budget papers as evidence in subsequent years. I mean, if funding was instead to continue at the same level it is now over the forward estimates, my rough calculation is it's about $100 million that's missing from the budget, a $100 million reduction, if it doesn't continue as it is profiled in this financial year.
Senator, so the purposeful design of the cyber strategy over 7 years has the action plan for 2. So the dedicated funding for a lot of the projects over 2 years. It's purposely, given the threat environment is changing so much, the government made a purposeful decision to come back twice in the context of the 7-year strategy for precisely that reason, to look at the initiatives to see whether or not they're tracking well, to see if there's a need to add additional investment or to change the profiling of some of the actions. But of course, some of them are enduring, such as the funding for the AFP investigation.
But given the threat environment, what guarantee do the Australian people have that you won't allow there to be such a dramatic cut in expenditure on cybersecurity in this portfolio?
Well, it's probably best handled by me, Senator Patterson.
Please.
And what I can do is point to the fact that under this government we've seen a substantial increase on cybersecurity funding compared to the former government, and that we're not going to the next election with a promise to cut public servant numbers.
Thanks, Minister. That doesn't actually answer the question.
Well, you're trying to portray a 7-year package. As you know, budgets operate on 4-year cycles. There is funding locked in for the next 4 years, as Mr.
Falling
Hansford
funding for the next 4 years.
Sorry?
Falling funding for the next 4 years.
No, there is funding in the budget for the next 4 years. That is not to say that the government won't add to that. But as has been pointed out to you already, we are already funding significantly more in cybersecurity than any government has ever done before. So I would say, in answer to your question, what assurances can I give the Australian public? Look at our record.
So this has been given in variation in a couple of different budget areas in this portfolio in previous estimates. And basically what it amounts to is we cannot rely on the forward estimates to be a reliable predictor of expenditure in this portfolio, because the previous secretary said, don't worry, every year we argue the case in relation to border protection funding and we'll get a top-up, and we'll get a top-up each year. So how can we actually rely on the budget papers, which then have implications for budget bottom line and other things going forward, if you're telling me this won't happen, we won't allow that to happen?
Well, what I'm saying is that we have forecast spending for the next 4 years.
Yes.
Increased spending compared to what any government has ever done before.
Falling spending compared to what you are spending this year.
Increased funding compared to what the coalition ever had in place.
Minister, is 77 million higher or is 70 million higher?
What I'm saying to you...
What about 64 million?
Senator Patterson,
Senator Patterson,
Senator
or 23
Patterson,
million?
order. You're going to let the minister answer.
Do you want me to go and pull out the figures from when your lot were in government?
But you're welcome to, but I'm more concerned about what's happening over the next 4 years.
Senator Patterson.
He asked me a question, Chair.
No, I think it was a rhetorical one. Senator, Ms Foster.
I just wanted to add that we have a comeback. As Mr Hansford said, it's a deliberate strategy. We have a comeback in 2 years for the next part of the plan. So it's not. This is not the total plan.
Sure. All right. Well, let's accept that as read for the purpose of this argument, and let's ignore everything outside of the 2 years, because obviously there will be an opportunity in 2 years' time to have it topped up and additional funding. Even then, there's a fall between this financial year and next financial year, from 77 million to 70 million. And if you take into account inflation and other pressures on budgets, that is going to be a reduction in spending on cybersecurity next financial year. How are we going to fix that with a 2-year cybersecurity strategy cycle?
So, Senator, the complexion of the 2 years is based on a number of different programs, and it's really how they're profiled over the 2-year action plan. You're right, there is slightly less funding in the 24-5 budget compared to the 23-4 one, but that does reflect where we're up to in different projects.
Is there a terminating program?
So yes, there is. So I can
Which
take you
is-
through
one
the
is it?
exact movements in program
Thank you.
1.3. So you can see from the PBS that the administrative expenses are actually increasing between 23-24 and 24-25. So the predominant reduction is in the departmental component of cyber in that year. So there is a terminating measure specifically. So that's in relation to the Quad initiative that the department has been leading from the 23-24 budget. That's $5.7 million is a terminating measure, which is impacting the departmental component. And in addition, what you're seeing there, Senator, is an actual, because departmental budgets are indicative and they get a share of the entirety of the government's budget, what you're seeing there is a change in the amount of the supplementation the department has received that's being allocated to the departmental program. So there's a small adjustment there.
Okay.
So it's predominantly the terminating measure for the Quad, and a small adjustment due to the supplementation the department has received, which is shared across the department.
Okay, I'll come back to the Quad issue and why that's terminating and not being expended in a second. But I think you said it was about $5 million. Is that right?
The Quad Initiative?
Yep.
5.7.
5.7, but the departmental total reduction is roughly 13 million. So less than half of that.
So I was explaining 23-24 to 24-25, which is the 10.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the change from this current financial year to next financial year, which is 65 million down to 52 million.
You're including the Section 74 external revenue as well. So there's a reduction there in the Section 74 revenue, which is actually money related to the naval shipbuilding project that's relevant to this program.
Right, so why is there decreased revenue from that?
That's just due to the way the activities and the services that the cyber program is required to undertake in support of the naval shipbuilding project.
Right, so we won't have any cyber requirements in the naval shipbuilding project next financial year?
No, Senator, so there's a peak in workload in the first part of the area and the program, and then that tailors off, given it's principally in relation to background checking of individuals, and then the work.
Why is that in the cyber division if it's about background checks?
It relates to some of the obligations that are under our critical infrastructure law, and that's where they've been placed.
Right. Okay. Explain. The ministers talk about the importance of Quad in the context of cybersecurity. Why is that program terminating and not being continued?
I'll get Mr Anstey and Mr Gower to talk about that program.
Thank you, Peter Anstey, First Assistant Secretary, Cyber and Technology Security Policy Division. The Quad measure, Senator, relates to the ORAN in the Pacific investment. You may be familiar with that measure, where we're building a...
Remind me, I'm not.
Along with Quad partners, we're contributing to the development of an Open RAN infrastructure in Palau, as under the Quad Critical and Emerging Technology Working Group. So that funding was a dedicated funding related to that measure.
And that project is concluded, or will be concluded, will be delivered?
That's right.
Right, and there's no further need for funding for that measure?
Not from the Australian side, no.
Okay, thank you.